I mean...
Are we to know, will we know, Father Martin, when the Antichrist is with us?
Yes, we will. We have been given 3 signs by the Scripture and confirmed by all doctrine and teaching for almost 1900 years. And it's very simple, Art. There's, first of all, the first sign, the major sign is this. In his day, I mean, when he's active, because he's here already, but he's not active. But when he is active, there will be problems, human problems, confronting us as a race, as a society of nations. Problems we can't solve. Our best, the best and the brightest of our technocrats and scientists and theorists and leaders will not be able to solve them. He will. That's the first thing. He will produce the solutions for them. And people will be so overwhelmed with gratitude and with relief that somebody has the solution which works, they will say to him, and the second sign is this, you must be divine. And the third sign is, he will say, kneel down and adore me. I am indeed your God. Then we have Antichrist.
You said he is here now. He is not yet active. I have heard this, that...
He's alive.
The Antichrist is now alive?
And he cannot die until Christ kills him. He has this pseudo-immortality. And don't ask me where, how, who, what.
How do we know that much? How do we know that?
From the second letter of Paul to the Thessalonians. If you read carefully, those 3 signs are there. And the fathers of the church, the early writers between 100 AD and 600 AD, they're the early writers. The 2 Gregories of Nyssa and Nazianzus and St. Basil, all those who wrote the Origin, the fathers of the church, the basic writers, they all agreed on the character and the signs of the Antichrist's appearance.
There are those, my listeners, many of whom believe that the signs are all around us now. The children, the blank-eyed killers, the soulless killers.
I know.
The killing of exorcists, the ritual murdering of exorcists, murder in the Vatican, just to name a few of the more recent within hours. But there are people who will say, these are signs that he is with us now.
Yes, there are signs that he is with us now, but the reign of Antichrist will be very, very signal, very clear. And the only source we have is that second letter of Paul to the Thessalonians and those 3 signs. And he has not yet started his operation.
Well, Father, I am not going to suggest that our president is the Antichrist, and there are many in my audience.
No, he's not. He's just a very naughty man.
Many who would. However, is it not reasonable to look at what the president is alleged to do on a fairly regular basis, and then look at the national poll of approval for this president, and make certain conclusions about the changed thinking and the acceptance level of what once would have been thought of surely as evil behavior by the American people? I mean, the acceptance of it.
Absolutely. But, Art, you, more than me, more than most of us, would I'm sure, appreciate the fact that there is now a growing gap between what the spin doctors create as the public mentality and what people are really thinking. And only if we had... Do you remember what was it, Art? The Cube, Q-U-B-E. Do you remember that Cube business? The instant reaction to the television?
I do, yes.
Remember that?
Yes.
Well, there's a very good reason why they would never install that. It was instantaneous, and it was done by computer, and if they put that in, and every one of the 40 million Americans, or roughly the adults amongst them anyway, were able to vote, I bet you the polls would be totally different about President Clinton and everything else.
Well, they might be. Father, hold on. We're at the bottom of the hour. My guest is the exorcist, Father Malachi Martin from New York City. This is Coast to Coast AM. maybe it was intended that you be here this night, Father.
Well, Art, these things, I heard the hesitancy in your voice when you spoke about coincidence, because in these things, I do not think there is any coincidence.
Yeah, I'm beginning to believe that myself.
There's a certain providence over things, and you and I originally were supposed to talk about 2 weeks ago, but we had to put that off for one reason or another, and we happened to latch on to tonight when these two things have come to a head, and other things have come to a head in the meantime too.
Before we leave the subject of the Pope and what has occurred tonight, Dan in Chicago asks the following.
Yes.
Please, if you can, tell us who are the advisors, that's in quotes, that recommended the Pope was safe to mingle with the darkness that is voodoo. I know it sounds like I'm being suspicious, but I just don't think these actions would be entered into without counsel. This could easily be the result of being too trusting with those nearest to him.
That's right. That's right. You see, the Pope has a theological commission of his own, 30 men usually. Some of them are not Catholic. Some of them don't even believe in God.
What?
Some of them certainly, leave much to be desired as regards the practice of Catholicism as such. And then there's that factor, number one. Number two, in the immediate entourage of the Pope, if you look at the people he frequents with daily, there is no shining light that you say, gosh, that's a holy man, that's an observant man, that's somebody you can look to for principles, Catholic principles. There is nobody like that. Anybody like that who had power has had his wings shorn, well shorn off him. And I remember talking to one of them recently, face to face, and he said, look, as a cardinal, what can I do? I've been stripped of all power. I said, Your Eminence, you can die. You can give testimony with your blood. At which he was mute.
Certainly was. What do you see for the future of the papacy? This man is frail. I don't know how long he will be with us. If there are hands manipulating what's occurring behind the scenes, what do you think comes next?
Well, I can have lurid thoughts, or I can have sort of pacifist thoughts. I know that he himself intends to, if that has any valency at all, he intends to live past the Y2K moment.
As a matter of fact, Father, he plans to go to Jerusalem, doesn't he?
I know. He plans that, and it goes to Sinai. He wants even to retrace the steps of Abraham, who came from a town called Ur of the Chaldees, now in Iraq, if possible. He may be restrained in that, because did you see the reason why the papal visit to Israel and the Middle East was put off?
Because of the problem, of course, with Jerusalem, is what they're suggesting.
No, the Vatican was very explicit about it.
Oh?
Yes, Toran, who is the sort of prime minister, if you want to put it, of the Vatican Secretary of State, said quite blatantly, the danger of war breaking out there is too much.
Well, it's another way of saying the same thing, yes. There's probably going to be a war over Jerusalem.
That's it. And over the whole question of the Palestinian state, because Netanyahu doesn't want a Palestinian state, and I quite understand why he doesn't. But I also understand why the Palestinians want a state. There are more of them than there are Israelis, by the way.
Does the Pope intend in that visit, if it is going to occur around the millennium, to try to bring together the three religions?
Art, his dream, and it's the only dream John Paul II has had. He never dreamt of controlling his bishops. He never dreamt of improving the condition of the religious orders. He never even dreamt of spreading Catholicism as a belief. His dream has always been to create a dynamic at the center of which would be Roman Catholics. Grouped around them would be the other Christian religions or sects or churches, Greeks and Russians, and Western Protestantism. And grouped around them would be the Jewish people, and grouped around them would be the Muslims. His dream was to make out of that a dynamic the world would have to respect. And it's his dream.
Is it your dream?
No.
What do you think
what's going to happen
will come to pass if he lives long enough and tries this?
What will happen will be that the institutional organization of the church, as distinct from the people who live the life of the church, the supernatural life of the church, that organization will cease to be the house of Christ.